Chapter 23, Wake-Up Call. Morning dawned bright and early. Too bright and too early when you'd been up half the night rescuing a downed British airman from the countryside and hiding him in your house. I came out of my room and looked down the hall at where my father's study was, thinking about Simon hidden away in the little room. The plan was that Dad would lock the door to his study and check in on Simon every few hours, giving him a chance to go to the bathroom, have a little something to eat. But anything more, and the staff would know something fishy was happening. And one of them would get word back to the Gestapo. I watched as the staff came and went, doing their morning chores. Which of them were sympathetic to the Allies? Which of them were loyal to Hitler? Had found the freedom, the joy that comes with giving yourself completely to the Fuhrer, as Horst had called it. Which of them would spy on us for the Gestapo to save their families from the concentration camps? There was no way to know. The only thing we could do was to keep our U-boat submerged as much as possible, only letting him up every now and then for a little air. Shh. I dragged myself to school, half asleep and fading fast. I planned to close my eyes and sleep through Air Professor Dr. Major Melcher's lecture on Nazi history. I'd memorized it all already anyway, and could answer anything he asked if he called on me. I had my head down on my desk at the back of the room before class started, drool trickling from my gaping mouth, when I felt someone poking me in the shoulder. Hey, Michael, wake up. It was Fritz, and he wouldn't stop poking me. Yesterday, I had fought to save his life. This morning, all I wanted to do was kill him. Leave me alone, I mumbled from behind my arms. Michael, wake up. I want to show you something. I dragged my head up. Whatever this was had better be good. I was going to show this to everybody, Fritz whispered, but I'm just going to show it to you instead. Fritz did the German look over his shoulder to make sure no one was listening, and I woke up a little bit. Whatever Fritz wanted to tell me, he didn't want anybody else to hear it, which meant it was something worth hearing. Fritz pulled a big blue piece of paper from his rucksack and pressed it into my hands. He smiled at me, eyes wide, like I should be amazed at what I was seeing. And to tell the truth, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Not at first. But when I did, I woke up for good. And fast. It was a secret so big, it could change the course of the war. Maybe change the fate of the world. And I had it right there in my hands. Chapter 24. Projekt 1065. The big blue piece of paper was a blueprint. A technical drawing of a new kind of airplane that hadn't been built yet. An airplane without propellers. The same airplane Simon had been trying to catch on camera when he was shot down. Projekt 1065, it said the name of the project right there in the corner. I caught myself doing the German look to make sure no one else was watching us. Fritz was practically hopping. It doesn't have any propellers, see? It has 2 jet engines, he said. A new kind of plane. A jet plane. It will go twice as fast as any other airplane in the world. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. Where did you get this? I asked. I quickly scanned as much of the paper as I could. There were lines and numbers and detailed instructions written all over it. My father's on the design team, Fritz said proudly. He'd kill me if I knew I took this from his study. I was going to show the whole troop, but then they beat me up, so I decided I'd just show it to you. I shook my head. I guess sometimes people did hand you their secrets, but only if you saved them from getting beaten to a pulp. Isn't it amazing? Fritz was saying. With this airplane, Germany will smash the Allies. And that's exactly what I was worried about. The only reason Hitler hadn't been able to invade England was because of its amazing Royal Air Force, the RAF. They'd beaten the Nazis in the skies over London and in the Battle of Britain, fighting against regular old propeller-driven planes, with propeller-driven planes of their own. But if this jet engine really was twice as fast as any regular airplane, they could fly circles around the RAF. The German Luftwaffe would defeat the RAF. Hitler would invade England and the Allies would crumble. The Nazis would rule the world. This says page 1 of 12, I said, my voice no more than a whisper, and I tried to hide my desperation. Where are the rest of the plans? Before Fritz could answer, the air was split with a siren so familiar none of us even jumped. Air raid. Chapter 25, a job to do. As a member of the junior Hitler youth ranks, I had a job during air raids, the same job every other young Volk had. Each of us had a section of a Berlin street that was ours, and our job was to run there as soon as the sirens rang and make sure that everyone who lived on that street got to their air raid shelter before the Allied bombs started to fall. At the sound of the siren, we were all out of our seats and running for the door. Class hadn't even started yet. The Allies were up early today, too. Fritz snatched the blueprint from me and stuffed it back into his rucksack. I caught myself reaching out for it and had to pull my hand back, watching the paper disappear with a gnawing ache-like hunger. I had to get my hands on the rest of those blueprints. The Allies had to have a jet fighter of their own to survive. Talk to you later, Fritz said, and off he ran to do his job. You bet you will, I said under my breath, and I was gonna stick to him now like medals on a Nazi general's uniform. I ran to the street. Mostly young married women lived here, some of them with babies, others with children in school off doing their own jobs during an air raid. Hardly any men. Most any man old enough to fight was away in the army or dead. The air raid sirens wailed as I hurried the women and the little kids to the shelter underground. I was supposed to shut myself in with them when I was sure we were all present and accounted for, but today I had another person I needed to check in on, and now was the perfect time to do it. The first bombs started to fall across the city as I ran back to the embassy. I could hear the dull poom, poom, poom in the distance, and then the ack, ack of guns, the anti-aircraft guns, began firing back. Tuff, 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 tuff. They were far enough away that I wasn't worried. Besides, I had to deal with the Allied bombers. I didn't shoot at them, and they didn't shoot at me. That was a joke, of course. They had no idea who or what their bombs were hitting when they dropped them from the planes by the ton, but I like to think it were true. I ran through empty streets full of empty houses. Anyone could have walked right in and stolen all of the silverware, the food, the radios, anything of value. And sometimes that was just what people did during air raids. People who were poor or starving or just looking out for themselves. That was part of the job of the Gestapo and the SRD, to patrol the empty neighborhoods during air raids to make sure nothing was stolen. They took the job very seriously, too. The penalty for stealing from houses while everyone was underground in bomb shelters was death. There weren't any Gestapo or SRD in the street near the embassy when I got there, and I ran up the steps and plowed inside. It was strange not to be met by a servant, to be entirely alone in the house. It was creepy, actually. It felt like everyone in the world was dead or gone except for me. But of course, I wasn't the only person there. I ran for my father's study and knocked on the door, calling out for Simon. I hoped he was already out of the secret room, walking in circles on his injured foot. Air raids were the only time he could really get out and walk around without anybody seeing him. Simon unlocked the door and let me in. Good Lord, Michael, you scared the life out of me. What are you doing here? The Nazi jet plane, I stammered, trying to catch my breath. Projekt 1065. I saw the blueprints. Chapter 26. Saving the World's Bacon. Projekt 1065? The blueprints? Simon said. How the devil did you? And I grabbed a pencil and paper from my father's desk and sketched out everything I could remember. I drew the shape of the plane and a few of the numbers and the words that I had seen before the air raid siren had sounded, and Fritz had ripped the page from my hands. Simon stared at the paper with an open mouth. But this is extraordinary. You saw this? Today? When? Where? How'd you remember so much of it? I told Simon everything. About Fritz, his father, page 1 of 12, my photographic memory. I don't believe it, Simon said. Do you know what this means? That I can finish my mission after all, and even better than before. I can bring home actual blueprints, not just photographs taken from 20,000 feet. He took me giddily by the shoulders. You may just save my bacon, and all of England, America, and Russians' bacon too, if you can get another look at those plans. Can you? And memorize more of them? Sure, I said. All I have to do is stay close to Fritz, and I'm sure he'll show them to me again. It'll be easy. We're on the same Young Volk squad, and then it hit me. We wouldn't be here for much longer. Oh no. What? What is it? I'm not going to be in the Young Volk anymore. They're calling up all of the 17-year-old boys from the Hitler Youth to fight in the German army, which means they're promoting all of the 13-year-olds like me out of the Young Volk a year early. Good Lord, Simon said. 17-year-olds fighting in the army? The Jerrys must be getting pretty desperate. Boys too young to shave, drafted to fight on the front lines? He frowned at me. But I still don't understand what any of that has to do with buddying up to this boy whose father has the plans. The initiation test into the senior Hitler Youth is in less than a week, I explained. If I don't pass the test, Fritz will join the SRD and I'll never see him again, unless he busts me for sneaking into a movie theater. I'll never be able to get close to him again. And who says you're not going to pass the Hitler Youth initiation? Simon asked. The last test is jumping off a 2-story building into a pool, I said. I'm so afraid of heights. I'm not just afraid. Pee your pants, freeze up, fall flat on your face, afraid of heights. And just thinking about the 2-story jump made me queasy. I've tried to get better at it, but what? But I just can't do it, I said meekly. Right, Simon said, clapping his hands. So we have less than a week to get you ready to face your fear of heights then? Is that right? Well, it wasn't that simple. You don't understand, I started to tell him. Believe it or not, I do, Simon said. Look, I've got some experience with this. I can help you overcome your fear. Enough at least to pass your test. But to do it, we're going to have to get started right away, all right? So let's head up to the roof. I quailed. The roof? I couldn't. You mean during an air raid? I asked. I was more afraid of the rooftop than the bombs falling all around us. Far more afraid of the rooftop. But I hoped reminding Simon of the air raid would stop his crazy plan. Why not? Simon said. How else is no one going to see us? Now let's hop to it. Chapter 27, The German Blitz. Berlin was on fire. That's what it looked like from the roof. Orange-red glows silhouetted the broken shapes of the buildings. Each inferno sprouted a thick, acrid mushroom cloud of smoke. The air smelled like burning metal and spent firecrackers. It tasted like fireplace ash and cement dust. The Americans knew the way to Berlin now, as if they were flying from New York to Philadelphia and back. They dropped their bombs on the city all at once, like children opening their fists to let out handfuls of pebbles to drop to the ground. Hundreds of thousands of bombs fell on Berlin, illuminated by the giant German searchlights that swept the dull gray skies for bombers. The thundering, teeth-clattering explosions of the bombs was accompanied by the staccato poom, 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 poom of the Nazis' anti-aircraft guns. Yellow streaks shot into the sky, exploding among the planes like pops of fireworks. One of the AA guns in the streets detonated like a cherry bomb. And I flinched. The searchlights made the guns perfect targets for the bombers that they were trying to shoot down. I had never been outside during an air raid before. This is what's going to happen to that factory, I said. What factory? Simon asked. The one I stole the secret location for, I said. I told Simon about finding the number in the playing card in the automaker's study. Dad sent the message off to the diplomatic pouch this morning. In a few weeks, a few days maybe, British planes will fly over it and do this. And I was so excited to help, but it won't be soldiers in those factories, will it? Nope, Simon said. It'll be prisoners, most likely. I shrank. I'd been worried enough when I thought it would be German civilians, but prisoners? Innocent people? Now they were all going to die because of me. If we don't bomb those factories, if we don't drop these bombs here today, the Nazis would win. And then there would be even more prisoners. Even more innocent people will die, Simon said. Sometimes good people have to be sacrificed to win a war. I nodded. My mother had told me the same thing in her way about leaving Simon behind. But we hadn't sacrificed Simon, and it was good that we hadn't. How do you decide who to sacrifice and who to save? Bad as this is, Simon continued, the Nazis did 10 times worse to us during the Blitz. He spoke quickly and quietly, even though it was hard to hear over the explosions. German planes overhead of us almost every night, dropping hundreds of thousands of firebombs on London. People huddled in the tube tunnels, lying down along the subway tracks, little kids crying, babies wailing, and up top, the whole blooming city being reduced to rubble. More than 8 months of it. 57 nights in a row. One time. And he paused, watching buildings explode. If this is payback. This is what this is. I knew about the Blitz, short for Blitzkrieg, which means lightning war. Poland, Belgium, and the Netherlands, Denmark and Norway and France, they had all fallen in a matter of months, sometimes weeks and sometimes even hours to the German army. But Hitler hadn't been able to conquer England. The Battle of Britain, fought entirely in the skies, was supposed to have crippled England and demoralized her people, made it ripe for an ambitious assault across the English Channel. And when it didn't, Hitler gave up on England and turned east towards Russia. England got knocked down and got back up again, but it might not be able to do that a second time if the Nazis developed jet planes. Which was why I was up here in the first place, I remembered, to get over my fear of. And then my stomach seized up as I suddenly remembered where I was. My head bobbed like a barrage balloon. My legs went wobbly, and the rest of me froze. I fell face first towards the floor of the roof. Chapter 28. Oh, crap. Simon put a hand to my chest, saving me from hitting the deck. Whoa there, he said. Keep it together, O'Shaughnessy. Stay with me. I fought to regain control, but I couldn't make my arms and my legs work. My heart worked, though. It worked overtime. It beat so fast, it threatened to overload my system, like a penny stuck in an electrical socket. You stood up here for 10 minutes before you remembered you were 2 stories up, Simon told me. That's lesson number 1. Distraction. We have to find something to distract you. Here, do sums with large numbers. That'll keep your mind occupied. What's 67,821 plus 91,725? Math already paralyzed me when I had my 2 feet on solid ground, and I closed my eyes and teetered. All right, not math, Simon said. Come on then. Tell me a joke about what prats the English are. I'm sure you've got hundreds. I shook my head to clear it, but that just made me dizzier. All I wanted to do was curl up in a ball and pass out. And I leaned into Simon, and he fell back against a chimney to keep us standing with his sprained ankle. Right then, Simon said, here's another one for you. An Englishman, a Scotsman, and an Irishman meet a magical fellow at the top of a tall building. The wizard tells them that if they jump off the building, whatever they say while they're falling will appear at the bottom. So the Englishman, he jumps off first, being the bravest of them, of course, and he yells, pillows, and he lands on a big pile of pillows. The Scotsman jumps off the next, and on the way down, he yells, hay, and he lands in a big pile of hay. Last up is the Irishman, but he trips on the edge of the building right as he's about to jump, and as he falls, he yells, oh, crap, and I laughed in spite of myself. That's a funny joke. There you go, see? Simon said. You hate the English, right? Of course you do. You're Irish. So every time you start to lose control, you think of some insult to throw at me, whether I'm here or not. That'll give you something else to focus on. It was a good idea, but I was too far gone. My stomach heaved, and I leaned over and threw up my breakfast and collapsed into a heap on the rooftop. Simon slid down with me. Well, we'll just have to keep working on it, won't we? He sat with me while I fought to stay conscious. So, funny story, he said. I'm deathly afraid of something too, and you'll never guess what. Chapter 29. A scream of swifts. Birds, Simon said. That's what I'm afraid of. Birds. I looked up at him. Bombs and anti-aircraft tracers still flared and boomed all around us, and Simon didn't bat an eye at them. But he was afraid of birds. My hand to God, Simon said. Birds frighten the pants off of me. One bird I'm all right with, though. I'm still not a fan. But a group of them together, all lingering about in a tree or on an electrical wire, he shuddered. A murder of crows kills me. A pandemonium of parrots makes me panic. A bevy of quail makes me quail, which is ironic, don't you think, seeing as how the birds and I both love to fly. I almost crashed a de Havilland twin-engine Mosquito just trying to get away from a row of geese flying south for the winter. I chuckled. My father was a hard man, Simon said, his eyes on the bombers in the sky. Solicitor, very serious. He didn't take it lightly that his son had some irrational fear of a bunch of birds. He told me that the best thing for it was to confront my fear head on. So one evening, he took me up onto a rooftop, much like this one, and stood me on a chimney. He told me it was to get used to the birds, but he didn't tell me that the chimney was full of swifts. I sat up and wiped my mouth with my sleeve. Have you ever seen swifts emerging from a chimney, Michael? At a precise time each evening, they burst forth from the chimney where they nest, like water from a garden hose, hundreds of them at a time. They battered me, clawed me, flapped their terrible wings in my face as they hurtled by. I was absolutely surrounded by them. I tried to leap away, but my father grabbed me by the shoulders and held me in place. He made me stand there and be swarmed by them. The idea was that by facing my worst fear, that I would just, get over it. There was a haunted look in Simon's eyes now, and I knew he wasn't joking about any of it. It sounded silly to be afraid of birds, but a real fear, like a true phobia, was a serious thing. People without one couldn't even understand. Simon worked at steadying his breathing. Was he doing something in his head to distract himself? Whatever he was doing, I gave him the time and the space to do it. It didn't work, of course, Simon said when he had recovered a little bit. I think I can confidently say it made things very much worse. I won't be dangling you off the side of the building, in case you're wondering, but confronting your fear in a controlled situation and learning to deal with your response actually helps you prepare for the big ones. To that, I can attest. Small steps, Michael, small steps. All around us, the Allies pounded Berlin, leveling the city to rubble a little bit more. So, are you ready to try again? Simon said at last. I think the Yanks will give us another hour or so of privacy. I took a deep breath and nodded. Did you hear the one? I said, about the Irishman, the Scotsman, and the Englishman stranded on a desert island. Chapter 30, The Edelweiss Pirates. The afternoon after the air raid, a dark black cloud hung over the bombed-out city. Gray ash still fluttered in the air like snow. Tumbled bricks and broken furniture filled the streets. Hitler Youth boys and aging air wardens were already hard at work, spraying water on the flames, tossing rubble into wheelbarrows, and stacking up the bodies of the people who hadn't made it to the air raid shelters in time. More Hitler Youth stood guard over the shops and the banks. A little boy in gray trousers and a little gray coat sat on a shattered roof timber, clutching a teddy bear and crying softly. He couldn't have been more than 4 years old. A girl from the Bund Duscher Madel, which is the girls' version of Hitler Youth, came and collected him. There was no sign of his parents. It was a scene that had played out the day before, and the day before that, and the day before that. Except today, there was something new. I stopped in front of a crumbling wall and stared. Down with Hitler was painted on the wall in big red letters, and beside it were written, "The High Command lies, down with the Nazi beast." And underneath the words was a little painted stencil of an Edelweiss flower. Edelweiss is a mountain flower with white petals in a kind of star shape around a yellow fuzzy center. The stems and the leaves are fuzzy too, and they grow pretty close to the ground. The Germans and the Swiss and the Austrians were mad for them because Edelweiss only grew in high altitudes where other plants can't grow. Survival of the fittest, flower style. Tough but pure. That made them holy around here, so holy that they were claimed as a symbol by both the Nazis and what passed for the resistance in Berlin, the Edelweiss Pirates. That's what they called themselves. Kids the same age as the Hitler Youth who didn't agree with Hitler and the Nazis. Like the real Edelweiss, they grew up in a hostile place that was always trying to kill them. They were dropouts from school, from Hitler Youth, from society. They spent their days avoiding the SRD in cafes and beer halls, smoking cigarettes and playing pool and making up funny lyrics to Hitler Youth songs. They let the air out of car tires, stole bicycles, picked fights with Hitler Youth when they caught one of them alone. But ever since the defeat at Stalingrad, the pirates had gotten more serious. Now, they were coming out during air raids when hardly anyone else was around and painting anti-Hitler slogans all over the city. If they weren't careful, they were going to wake the sleeping bear. But I was glad somebody else was coming and doing something to fight back. Chapter 31, A Real Nazi. The next morning, I made a detour by Fritz's house on the way to school. Most of the buildings on his street were still standing, and red and white flags with big black swastikas hung from every windowsill. Some people may have agreed with the Edelweiss Pirates, but they weren't brave enough to show it. Fritz came to the door when I knocked. I hoped he would invite me inside. I hoped I might get a chance to snoop for the blueprints of Projekt 1065, but he told me to wait on the front step and came back with his rucksack and his little sister. Her name was Lena. She was 10 years old, wore her blonde hair in braids like every other girl in Berlin, and was dressed in the uniform of the junior BDM, a blue skirt, a white blouse, and a honey-colored jacket. Lena froze when she saw me. She stared at me with big saucer-shaped eyes. "What?" I asked her. But Lena didn't say anything. She kept staring at me with those big round eyes as she followed us to school. "Your sister's creepy," I told Fritz. "I know. She's a goofy dame." I shot Fritz a sideways look. Goofy dame was more English slang, kind of like gumshoe. I didn't want to scare him off, so I didn't say anything about it, but I filed it away for later. So, do you still want to join the SRD? I asked Fritz. The Hitler Youth invitation is in 3 days. Fritz nodded. I don't know if I'm going to make it, though, he said. I'm not strong enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not even tough enough. Well, maybe we can help each other out, I told him. I want to be in the SRD, too. I hated the idea of being in the junior Gestapo. I hated the thought of marching around in jackboots and spying on my neighbors. But if it meant staying close enough to Fritz to get the jet fighter plans, I'd do it. We can train together. I can help you get stronger, teach you to fight, and maybe you can get me over my fear of heights, for the test of courage. It's a deal, he told me, and we shook hands. To beat Hitler, I guess I was going to have to become a real Nazi. Okay, guys.